Welcome to day 2 of the Centre Court MBA Festival. We took you on a bit of a world tour yesterday through Barcelona, London, the East Coast, and had some fantastic discussions that you can now find on the various Poets and Quants YouTube and Facebook channels. But day 2, we're heading west and spending a lot of the day in Los Angeles and Berkeley, but starting in Palo Alto. Now, the Queen of England, of course, has just celebrated a big jubilee. The Queen actually has 2 birthdays. There's the day that she was, that apparently royalty are then given. I get to celebrate about if Palo Alto joins me for the Centre Court MBA Festival, and we get to talk about inspiring leadership. That is, of course, Kirsten Moss, the GSB. It's always lovely to see you, Kirsten. And with her, and highly recommended, and I can only begin to tell all of our viewers how much you're going to enjoy the next 35-40 minutes. We're joined also by Will Torres. Will is the Director of Outreach for the GSB, has as exotic a background as Kirsten that saw him studying marine biology. He was a reader of Harvard Law, but now doing great things for the diversity and outreach efforts at Stanford. So thank you, both of you, for taking time in your schedule. Kirsten, if I can start, Will and I both agreed that we always learn something on any of the panels that we share with you, but maybe just a general introduction to a school that you know so well. You first began there in 2004, have returned as the admissions director just 5 years ago. Tell us a little bit about the Stanford magic, its mission, how the location makes such a great difference.
And you know, Matt, I could talk about this for hours, so I'll try to keep it really, I'll just try to keep it to a few minutes. One of the things that has always attracted me to Stanford and has meant that I can't imagine leaving is at our mission, we talk about changing lives, changing organizations, and changing the world. And that is at the heart of everything we do. We think about as students come in, we're trying to give them the learning, really the confidence, the community to go forth and figure out what they want to do in the world and how they're going to take their own potential and build on that and then use it to create great things. So I think that's at the heart. And given our locations in Silicon Valley, we're filled with, I would call it optimism. You know, it's also called innovation. We're not afraid to fail. So we've designed a program where you can come in and really think about, our tagline now is it all starts at Stanford, it all starts with you. It's very flexible, and we expect you to come in and think, what do you care about? What are the problems you want to solve? And then not only do you have all the academic offerings at Stanford, but at all of our graduate schools, you can take classes. About 80% of our students do that. 20% are in joint degrees. So you'll find a group of students coming in, and it's really about them, their journey. How do they increase their confidence and resilience to go out there and make a difference in the world? So that's what I think is really distinctive and magical about Stanford.
And as you encourage them to go out of the comfort zone, it's something that you apply to the school itself. Just as you think about the last 5 years as the head of admissions, are there ways that you have seen the school continue to evolve? Of course, how you've navigated the last 2 years of a pandemic, that same sort of resilience, but always pushing forward, and the optimism that you described?
Yes, these last 2 years, and I just had the great honor of giving the last lecture to our class of 2022, and I was reflecting with them on just 2 years ago. Our greatest worry was, could they even make it to campus? So watching these students go through with their own, you know, within California, within our environment, in this bubble of California, really being able to create community through just sheer optimism, grit, persistence, being creative. I think they represented all the things that the school tried to help and support them. So it's just been a joyous last week watching them. And Matt, I think that reflects, if you look at it through the students' eyes, what we try to do as a school is it's not easy. There's no way through, but there's got to be a way that we can get it done together. And I think you'll see that in this class when they graduate Saturday.
You commented that in the first year as the admissions director at the GSB, you were going to read every application. And I said, you know, Kirsten, there's over 8,000 of those applications in this iconic essay about what matters most to you and why. But of course, being you did read all of them. So presumably those 426 or 430 students you knew their stories, and from what you had seen in the applications to the young men and women now graduating, that must be very rewarding. What do you think you had seen in them as collectively?
You mean in this particular class, Matt, or in applications in general?
But well, perhaps it's more general, but it could well be the class of 2020,
True.
2020.
And just to be clear, my intent and whatever answer I had was that I was reading the applications of those who are admitted. 8,000, Will would appreciate, would be an awful lot of applications if I personally read every one of them. So yes, I get a chance. That's one of the best parts, and I bet Will would also agree, the best parts of our job is we get to know about someone's journey, what they're sharing, especially our essay, What Matters Most and Why. You really feel you touch a human part of who they are. So getting a chance starting at mid-weekend and then all the way through until they graduate to actually see these applicants walk out of those applications live in 3D is compelling. I'd say what our applicants share, there's so many myths out there. And as I talk to our applicants who have made it to admit weekend, it's one of the most common reframes is like, oh, I almost didn't apply, Kirsten. I went to a community college, or I'm not a consultant, or the consultants will say, I was a consultant, but I didn't think a consultant could get in because there's so many of them. What they share is they've really gone out within the communities that they belong to. Could be their organization, their college, their university. It could be their extracurricular activities, and they've just taken action to make an impact that was important. So people know they have been there. I've said to you before, Matt, that I call these footsteps that they've left. But really, as you read their applications, we ask not only what matters most and why, we also ask a question that says, tell us about a time you've had an impact that was meaningful. And it could be on your family. Just like I said, it could be in your classroom. And that's what we're looking for. And that's what these stories share. What we believe deeply is that past behavior will predict future behavior. So tell us a little bit about your stories. And I'm sure if you can tell us a story that you're proud of, that we will be able to see why it was important and to see the things that you have done to make a difference.
Will, I see you nodding enthusiastically, and I'm sure as Director of Outreach, this resonates with you. You'd commented earlier, the real magic of that beautiful campus is just the buzz as they spill out of classrooms, the conversations that are taking place, this extraordinary group. How would you sort of frame Kirsten's point about individuals that perhaps had thought that the GSB was beyond their reach, or business school wasn't on their path?
Yeah, I think part of what makes Stanford so amazing is just that sense of curiosity combined with initiative, but also humility. You'd be surprised that you might be talking to a student, have multiple meetings, but not know all of the different things that they've done before until it might come up either in a conversation by chance or with someone else. And I think that helps bring people together. And that comes back to the question, like, why Stanford? What makes it so special? It's not just the people, but the things that happen when you put these people together. Whether it's how do you give and take feedback in a way that's going to be constructive, or how do you poke around an idea and have that curiosity to say, hey, can I solve this from a different direction? Just the ways that folks from different backgrounds, industry, geography, cultural are able to have these discussions in the classroom and then open it up, like Kirsten said, across campus. Maybe you're in a class with engineers or folks at the law school. And that's just to scaffold the way that this experience really does build not just that creative confidence, but like creative courage, the belief like, I can do this, and here are the resources and people that I can do it with. So it's just amazing to watch them grow. And you even see in the first quarter that you're here, just the way they engage with each other and the questions shift. So I'm always so thrilled whenever people say, I did apply, because you see them here and thriving. And so that's one of the things that we hope to do is help empower people so that they feel like they can put their best foot forward in the application process, so they can have experiences like at the GSB or any one of other amazing programs out there.
You talked about that humility, Will, and it's perhaps several conversations and you're completely unaware of some of the accomplishments. When the school talks about change lives, it's not necessarily that you had to have come up with some medical cure that for 350,000 people. It can be on a far more individual an immediate community level.
Exactly. Scope and scale, those are just ways for us to understand, but there's not one preferred over the other. It really is, to Kirsten's point, about that curiosity and ability to take action, have initiative to tackle the things that you care about. And just again, that it all comes back to you just really does resonate more and more as we talk about it.
Matt,
I'm sure you can imagine, Kirsten, please.
I was going to say, can I interrupt for a second there? One of my favorite applicants I had a chance to meet just recently this year is someone who had taken off, they almost didn't apply because I'd taken off, I think, 8 or 10 years in between high school and college. His parents were unable to raise his siblings. He had 4 younger siblings. And the student, that was really the work, talk about changing lives. That was the work that he had been focused on, making sure they got through high school, through college, and then he went back to college and applied right after that. So there's not one path, and there's not one way to define what matters most to you. But we're looking for those kinds of actions across all these different dimensions. And when I read that application, I just remember, think of the grit and persistence, think of the compassion, all of that goes. And that's what leaders do. They step up.
You've talked in the past, Kirsten, about behavior, parents and 4 siblings. You might see that in a professional setting, something else that you've done through your academic career. It's, I suppose, part of your detective work is to be able to connect those dots and see those behaviors repeat themselves.
Exactly. And you broke up there a second. So would you repeat the question? I heard the detective work and repeating those behaviors.
Yes, we established a long time ago that you're as a detective, but behaviors and how they might replicate themselves across many different chapters and aspects of an individual's life, a commitment to family, in a work setting, academically, you can see it in so many different ways.
Yes, some of them that jump out as a detective for us when we're looking for it in the application. One we talk a lot about is really, tell us about how you've used your mind, your ideas, how you've had insight. So oftentimes people think in our application process, it's just about that GPA or it's just about that score. For us, that helps us understand, can you thrive in our program as more of a baseline? What we're really looking for is what have you done to find those insights that matter to others? Maybe that's where you spike. Maybe you spike in really your persistence and grit and getting things done. That's a whole nother arena that we look to. Maybe you are fabulous about getting others to come with you, getting them to join whatever efforts you're having, engaging and influencing. And then we find some folks who spike often from mentoring, developing others. They spend a lot of time in their efforts and their activities. So these are all some of the leadership domains, and you don't have to do all of them. You can do one well, but we're looking for reasons to admit. So we're looking at your applications to see some of those types of actions within your application.
Yeah, and something that I love about those, if I can jump in,
Yes,
is that
please.
all of those are industry and setting agnostic. Where you are in life or where you come from, that's context, and that helps us understand, okay, what does this mean for your journey? But all of those things, anybody can be expressing them in different places. So that's kind of the beauty of that holistic review process, is we are able to call that out regardless of where it shows up in your life.
That's awesome.
As Kirsten was this week, I suppose I'm reminded of, or interested in, your definition of diversity, because there you have 420 or 430 completely different and very distinct stories. How do you like to think about diversity at the GSB, and why does it matter so much to you?
Yeah, so there's maybe 2 ways to think about it, both diversity broadly defined. I know often we think about it on just a couple of different dimensions. Maybe it's race or gender, but there's things like a political stance or kind of the upbringing that you bring with you, the industry. So it's these different layers of who you are. And then the other half of it is diversity within diversity. In any given community, there's also going to be a ton of different journeys. Even if we're all at the GSB, the way we all got here is different. So it's, how do you see the world and what's that perception? And how do you share that with others? Because the type of place the GSB is in the classroom, maybe you're talking about a case, or maybe there is an idea that you are working on with maybe it's a tech club or women in management, and just having people be able to chime in and both add to the conversation and challenge your worldview. Dean Levin talks about education as fundamentally being about encountering difference. And that's kind of at the heart of being at the GSB, and being able to talk through those and be inspired by those in a really productive way.
No doubt many of our viewers and countless thousands that have applied to the school will a question for you. Every year you publish a class profile that has core data about average GPA, average GMAT, obviously that Kirsten described. But with all of the different backgrounds, perhaps there's an element where people say, this is what I should be like. But in fact, there's another interpretation that you're implying. It's how you're bringing your difference to contribute to those voices and the sort of exchange and discussions that they're then going to enjoy for 2 years.
I love that. Before you comment, Will, that was well said, Matt. You should print that as like absolute words of wisdom.
I was about to just applaud you as well.
Yeah.
That's exactly the way we think about it. The things that you see on the class profiles are outcomes and not things we're necessarily selecting for. And so that's when we're always trying to tell people, who are you? What do you bring to the table? It's not about trying to fit into some certain mold or market yourself as some type of business school or Stanford archetype, but really allow kind of the things that you do and the way you see the world to really come to the forefront of your application. Because when we're reading your application, you are the most fascinating person in the world to us. And I want to learn all about you. And so I try to really instill that when people are trying to approach us and figuring out, what should I say about myself? How should I say it? Be you.
And I'm so well said, Will. And Matt, you can barely get a word in edgewise with us when we get together. Sorry about that. I do want to give a shameless plug for this. Really came from Will's and his team's creative innovation that started in COVID 2 years ago. He has launched something called Application Week, where there's a series of sessions, and now it'll be all throughout the summer, and really hitting on this is to help democratize how we help applicants put these stories forward. So no matter what school you're applying for, if you're really interested, how do I get started on my essays? How do I tell my stories? How do I think about the references that I want? It's our effort to break down session by session to give you that guidance, because everything Will is saying is true, and sometimes you need some help to get started. So many of us in admissions for years and years have just said, come to a session, we'll tell you all about Stanford. We've kind of flipped that on the head and said, there's lots of ways you can find out about Stanford, but come learn how you can really put your best foot forward in this process and do it in a very hands-on way to get tips and tips and tricks really from picking up that pencil and getting going.
Yeah, and you can actually find many of these online already. So if you search Stanford, What Matters Most and Why workshop, or Stanford Telling Your Story workshop, GSB, you'll see my face pop up. So we already have a repository if folks are curious and want to start playing around.
Great. So we'll amplify the plug. There's material that's already available, and then you continue to add to that over the summer. And as people are thinking about the next admission cycle, they can check in. Fantastic. Lots of live events too. Great. Within of schools looking, starting with a resume, and Kirsten, it was the idea of context. Maybe it's a job title, or opportunities that an individual has had, but digging a little deeper and understanding for a person to have achieved that accomplishment, maybe starting from the word distinct challenges. So it's not job titles, right? It's really trying to uncover, in any scenario, you were perhaps the first member of your family to go to school, and that's a real achievement. So there are layers upon layers that you're looking to explore in each profile. Yeah,
and in fact, we just had, Will was there yesterday, this wonderfully rich discussion with our admissions committee in thinking about our entire evaluation process. And that really is a theme that we talk about, which is when we think about leadership, it's these behaviors, it's not titles. And we actually, on each application, think about the leadership we have seen someone taken in their context. So it's this demonstrated leadership in context. So it might be, as you said, Matt, very different for someone even to get, if you're a first gen, your parents never went to college and you were able to get a, let's say a 3.3, something like that in college, that may be the exact same accomplishment as someone whose parents are PhDs and they were able to get an A- average. And we're constantly looking into where has this person come from and what did it take to travel that distance? And I know you hear this from admissions officers all around the world. We talk about it, but I truly want you to know we're living and breathing it. That's like part of our evaluation kind of score, call it our scorecard or whatever it is, as we remind our admissions officers, that's what it's about. Where did they start and what are those steps they've taken?
With all of the different components, Will, that both of you review, and applicants sharing resumes, letters of recommendation, the essays, of course, do you then extend that? For example, many candidates might have an extensive social media footprint. Is that something that you then refer to learn more about the candidate?
Shameless plug here. Everything that we need to know is in the application, so we won't really go out and click additional links. If it's important to you, how and why, and I think being able to understand the why behind it and articulating that is more valuable for us on the admission side than following a link and seeing what's out there, because this is about you and how does that inform the way that you engage with the world around you. Plus, we're reading thousands of applications and essays and letters. It's kind of beautiful to have that kind of window to your world as that application piece. So
I'll obviously have to send you the link of the dance moves on TikTok that I have in the public domain, but
I can't wait to see that, Matt. That'll be awesome.
Perhaps, Kirsten, as here we are in the middle of June, and people looking at the round one deadlines of the first half of September, some of them will be embarking on that themselves are leaning in to provide insights and perspectives about the for with recommenders.
I don't know. Will, did you hear that question? You were breaking up, Matt, so it was really hard to hear you.
I apologize.
That's okay. I just want to answer the right. I want to answer the right question.
Right,
I heard something about recommenders.
I'm just thinking, as here we are in mid-June, and applicants looking to apply in September, they may well be sitting down and having discussions with possible recommenders. How do you encourage them to frame that discussion?
Great question. And maybe the best place to start as well is who to ask. So you've been hearing us talk a lot that we're looking for what you've done. So think about when you're choosing those recommenders, who has really been able to see the things that you've been working on, the things that you cared about most. They don't have to have senior titles. They don't have to be alumni. And once you decide that, I always advise, because it's important, these recommenders might help you with all your applications, taking a moment to sit down with them, to tell them why you wanted to go to business school, to give them that backdrop. And also you'll come prepared, remind them in your discussion with a few bullet points of maybe things you've worked on together so they can have highlights and jog their memory. I would encourage you to be very careful, though, of giving them anything in writing. I know for our school, we do, when we're looking at recommendations, sometimes we'll find recommendations where we'll see like the exact same paragraphs in both of them. That can happen. And there's nothing that can take the sort of blush off the rose when you're reading an application is to see that. So once you're providing additional information to those recommenders, you don't really know what they will do with them. And I'm sure it's all with good intent, but at the end of the day, it's your application. So really encourage you to sit and talk about things so those recommenders can use their own words. That'll bring it far more to life than you providing words for them.
And if I could add one more piece of advice, taking a step further is growing up, I never realized how powerful it could be to have champions in your life, whether they're advocates, sponsors, mentors. And I'm not saying this just because performance evaluations are coming up soon, but Kirsten, like I didn't realize how impactful that could be until I was able to work in the admissions office with Kirsten and some of the other folks. And so for everyone out there, I would also say, beyond the utility and the immediate need of a letter of recommendation, think about who in your life can serve some of those roles. And it doesn't have to be one role forever, and it could kind of be fluid, but bring them along on your journey with you, consult them, seek advice and feedback from them. And then, especially for those of you who are thinking about this further on down the line, then asking for that letter actually becomes a little bit easier, and they'll have a little bit more insight into some of the things that we might be asking. So just even thinking about how do you set yourself up best for kind of life and professional settings can be a really great foundational step that'll set you up for the different pieces of the application later on.
That was beautiful.
I've often described to our viewers at Centre Court that the chance to apply to business school is a gift. It's this chance to step back, perhaps after 4, 5, 6, very intense years of work or academic study, and really reflect. There's a level of introspection. And I see the GSB as sort of a gold standard in how you encourage applicants to really explore choices that they've made and the path they've taken. That takes time to really think deeply. So perhaps just to allay any concerns, Kirsten, of those that think, round one, it's just around the corner. Yeah. As you look at round one and round two is there for a reason. And, would you say an equal chance of acceptance in round two compared to round one?
Yeah, this is, I always try to answer these questions, Matt, so honestly and authentically. So I think ironically, when I first started, I would say, yes, they're both equal, but if you're ready, we've said this, put in your, if your application's good to go, maybe the first round will be, would be a great choice just because the class is completely open. The longer I've done this though, the more I realize every year is a little bit different. And so I think the best advice I could give anyone is think about in your life, in your schedule right now, when will you have that window where you can do this work and really think deeply about who you are, put those essays in. If it's round one, fabulous, go for it. If it's round two, fabulous, go for it. Round three, I do have to warn you, that can be harder because the class is really filled at that point. And I don't think there's any way, the only way to game the system, if that, that's a very direct way to talk about it. The best way to game the system maybe is to have each individual really put that application in the place they think it's its most compelling form, truly. So long-winded answer, Matt, to say round one, round two, after 5 years of doing this, I think you're going to have equal opportunities, but make sure that you have left yourself that time so you really can get it over the finish line beyond that last 24 hours of craziness.
And you're not asking the candidate to focus on, what will the post-MBA job be about? I mean, you sort of see this as 2 years of adventure, exploration, an extraordinary bunch of classmates with their own open-mindedness. So it's less about, I'll be doing this, immediately after school.
Yes.
And perhaps more, why the path?
Yes. So there's a yes and to that. So we have spoken, I think you and I, Matt, before that something it was a long time ago. So spurious data looked at how many students, what they said they wanted to do and what they did. And 70%-ish had changed, pivoted pretty dramatically. So we know what you're telling us isn't, nor should it be the exact end place that you want to get. And at Stanford, we really believe no matter what you do, you're going to have the resources, the learning to get there. Maybe it'll take a pivot here or there to find, but we know you're going to get there. So at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to us what the journey or destination has to be. But I will say, spending time thinking about what you might like it to be is important to us. Great leaders look in, they understand what their values are, and they're able to then say, therefore, this is something I'm interested in doing. So we won't hold you to that, but I would love for you, if you have this moment, to say, here's what I think I might like to be doing. I think that's
Right.
an important step, and it will help you decide once you get here, what are the types of things? Because at Stanford, it is us, there's a buffet of so many things. What are the first things that you might start to like eating just to see, to prove those hypotheses?
Will, when I do these webinars with Kirsten, I'm just listening so intently to what she shares with that lovely transparency and spontaneity, and then I realize that the audience have been sending in questions, but in our case you've been, I think, writing answers to all of the Q&A that have come in. Can you do all of the webinars with me, please?
I love webinars.
A final question. A final question for you, Will, in terms of outreach, the team getting back on the road. I think it's next week that you will publish a calendar of in-person events, but of course there are a whole series of virtual. So how can our viewers get in touch with the school? Some of those different events, tell us about those. And even just your recommendation for more ways for outreach with perhaps students and alums, and some great conversations that they can have.
Yeah, definitely. So happy to talk about this all day long as well. It's kind of my bread and butter. And so first off, I just want to assure folks out there that you don't have to engage with anything to be admitted and apply to apply and be admitted to the GSB. I know sometimes there's that worry, do I need to visit campus before? Should I meet X amount of alumni before? For us, that is for your benefit, to help you understand the community and culture, and not a requirement for admission. So I just want folks to know that, because that's not always possible for everyone, and that's okay. And so the way we're approaching outreach this summer, over the next few months, is that we're going to have a backbone of online events. So regardless of where in the world you are, you'll have a whole host of different types of events as well. So whether you're curious about what's it like to work in a certain area of the world, or different career paths, what are some of the resources at the GSB that are in place to help me thrive while I'm there? We're designing these so that you're able to opt in to the events and information that's most important for you. So you don't have to sit through a whole information session hoping that something's going to come up. And these will be online and we'll record them so that they're going to be an ongoing resource. We try to evolve and iterate on this based on the feedback we get from you all. So we really are living the life of feedback is a gift, and channeling that Stanford spirit. And we will be doing some limited domestic travel and a few international spots. And as Matt mentioned, we will be posting all of these to our calendar within the next week or so. So definitely by mid-June, we'll have much more information out there. Check our website, check our events calendar, it'll all be there.
Fantastic, great. I always look for a clumsy way to come full circle with these webinars, and started with a 70th Jubilee for Queen Elizabeth. It's been 5 years now at Stanford in your current role. What enthusiastic about Stanford and a job that you love so much. So as you reflect on those 5 years, perhaps even think about the next 5, can you remind us again of the new mission statement, Beyond Change Lives, and how that reflects what you see in the GSB?
So you're talking about our mission to develop principled and insightful and innovative leaders.
Yes.
Matt, next time I'll let you say that one for me. How about that? It seems like you know it. I love it. That's when I think about the next 5 years, that's what brings me to work every day with joy, is I really believe that Stanford provides, because I watch it happen, provides our students the opportunity to develop themselves. I think of it as a jetpack almost. You have these seeds dormant inside of you, and you can strap this on and really begin to fly. So for me, I think the challenges that are most exciting is continually to figure out, how do we get our message out to high potential leaders? And these sometimes are people who don't even know themselves yet, or don't see themselves yet that they're high potential leaders, but we know they are, so they can understand and have the community and support they need to make the difference that I know they can.
Well, I'm going to just borrow one word for that, and for our viewers as we conclude the first panel of today. Applying to Stanford, do so with conviction, do so with self-belief, and do so with joy. here are two individuals that clearly love what they do. They bring joy to their work, joy to the school, joy to those classes year after year. Will, it was such a pleasure to welcome you to Centre Court. And of course, Kirsten, it's always a pleasure to welcome you back. Have a great summer, and thank you for being with us.
Great to see you, Matt. Good luck, everyone.